Good things, we just need to get out of the way. So she's gonna do that first and then we'll jump in. Okay.
I brought a very silly interactive thing. It's just I like life. And I have this fun little board that I've been playing around with. And I love it just before you go to it. We're not official at all.
Is this for Earth Day things?
No, it's for my own personal writing project.
Nice.
Yeah, we do it because I haven't revised our thing.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly. We should, yeah, compare and contrast to the.
And then I can catch up. Yeah. I think.
Oh, very good.
The go-getter does it automatically. She sure. I know, I didn't even bring my personal line for me. Laura, you want to sit over here? I do.
I'll stand. I don't mind. I'll just give you guys a little bit of background of myself. I started here with the town in 2004.
Wow.
It's pretty crazy. So I've done a little bit of everything, records, utilities, deputy clerk when Deb left. So I've done a little bit of everything. So if there's anything you guys ever need, any help on, I can probably find it. I know where to look. And that's actually one of my favorite things to do is look through the records. So always know that my door is open and I'm here to help you. My job literally is to make your job easier. I'm here. If you're going to a meeting and you're like, Doris, I need 10 copies of this. I'm going to Boulder County. I'm here. Call me. That is exactly what my job is to make you guys function well. And I hope we can succeed at that. But couple things that I wanted to go over. So like I said, big project that we are working on, records digitization. The old board knows about this, but we have had paper, and I mean, just, you wouldn't believe the amount of paper we have touched. We've sent over 8 pallets, I think, over to be scanned. We're going to Laserfish, which is something none of the town has ever used. It's always been digged through the files. So that is going on and it's a lot. It's a lot of paper, but we're hoping to get there. And that way, when you say, I want to see 123 Main Street, boom, it's right there for everybody to see. So I think that's what they keep telling me. You're the hard part. It's going to get easier. So, but now with the election behind us, it should get better. But that's. My deputy clerk and Cassie are really good. They do not like paper. So they've even bought me a little scanner because I'm such a paper person. They're like, we don't want to get back to this point again. We don't want mountains and mountains. So I'm learning to scan things in and shred. So trying to teach myself. It's terrible, especially I learn better if I write something down, it sticks in my brain. So it's just a big learning curve for me too. I have some folders there for you guys that have a little bit of homework. It's your I-9, your W-4, an emergency contact, things like that. You're welcome to take them and bring them back to me. Lee, if nothing has changed on that, don't worry about it. You're good. Stipends, the board gets paid quarterly. The mayor received $700 a month and trustees receive $400 a month, and we pay that quarterly. So you will see that when I get your direct deposit, everything is funneled through that. Let's see what's next on here. Workshops, meetings, special meetings, executive sessions. I've set you all up with town emails. Just kind of make it a habit. Peek on it once a day because things change so fast around here. It's like, wham, we need a special meeting. Who's available in 2 days? And some people don't check their email. So always and I'll be really good. I'll be like, Laura was canceled this month, so take that off your calendar. But that's always how I'll send that out to you. Make sure you guys are signed up on the website for the notifications, because that will usually I post my packets on Thursday. So everybody's got to get all their signed documents, get everything to me. All that takes me all day Thursday, me and Victoria reads every single piece of paper. And I mean, that agenda is literally still changing till I hit go. So that will go up. You'll get like a text or something. There's a new agenda. Always be prepared for Friday. You have an amended agenda because I got a signed contract or somebody updated the minutes or we misspelled somebody's name, something crazy. So that's what that will be. So that's such a good function to have. It'll text you or email you. So make sure you're signed up for that. IT issues. I've got 3 working for Amy, Julie and Mariah. I'm getting those Thursday. Greystone should have those up and running, I'm hoping, and then I'll sign those out to you. I know everyone else has a personal device, but if you want a town one, and I say that because, for Cora. If it's your personal device and we get a Cora from a newspaper that I want everybody's emails and texts, they get to go through it. So it's just kind of important. So, but they're there for you. The last board, we'd issued them to everybody.
As long as we use town email, you can search the town email.
Well, I just hand it over to, whatever the Cora is, yeah, I submit it to Greystone. They scrub the server. Then that goes to legal. Legal then has to, it's so, it's a whole process.
Even if I'm using town email on my personal computer, they don't have to actually have access to that computer. They can search the email.
Right, they can scrub the server, whatever's on the server.
One thing I've done in that regard, because people, people all the time, people email you all the time on your personal email and ask you town questions. I will forward that to my town email. And I'll respond to them from my town email saying, I'm responding from my town email, at least do subsequent emails about town business.
So it's pretty important. And I want to just touch on that a little bit because I don't want the board to feel that you need to do a Cora request for anything in this building. It is all public record. Just call me and say, geez, I want to look at the liquor license for Main Stage. You got it. It's all public record. The only thing is my employee files and a couple of HR things. But other than that, whatever you guys need, Cora's usually, I get a lot of those. I want to see your bid documents and they're from companies not even in this state, so it's a lot. And then it's just a lot for legal to review and our IT, it just, runs up the cost, but always open door. You guys just give me a call and I will make sure we find it for you. Right now, all my records are in Wisconsin, but I've gotten a few more requests and I've been able to get them, so it's pretty good.
Does the board want to know what the request? Not obvious questions, but should the board look at that? I think we're never open with the
I think it
Does the board want
depends.
to know?
Because it is public.
And
If John Smith says, I want a Cora request on the building at 160 Main Street. I just, unless it's going to pertain to you guys, okay, I need all of your emails from this period. Then I would notify the board because I typically don't. But if that's a policy you want to change, you guys let me know.
interesting. I'm just asking if the other board members want to know that he's requesting for stuff.
I guess, what I could do is maybe monthly, for one of the admin reports, put in received 8 Cora requests this month. And if anybody wants to dive deeper, we can do that. Yeah.
I kind of look because it's happened in other jurisdictions, maybe I've been hearing, sometimes there are people in town that are basically under school districts to harass the district or the town by filing one over and over.
Oh, yeah.
And I kind of like to know if that situation arises, who it is, because then they come to the board. Now, I want relief from, if you do this, and this. I'd like to know the board maybe kind of aggressive.
That sounds good. That's definitely something I can do.
Yeah, I would just say at the charter school, that I'm the board chair, we don't notify everyone.
Right.
Unless it becomes an issue that the board needs to address.
Right. Okay,
Less work on staff.
right.
I think monthly
Just something in there. Okay.
That'd be good.
I can certainly do that. Door codes. I have a temporary door code for board members that I will be giving you guys. Sometimes you might have, and it's gotten away from that. We used to have like HOAs that would meet in here, but if you guys are having a meeting with SAC and you're the first one here, you'd be able to let them in. So I will get those temp codes to you, and you typically, all the other doors will be locked. This will stay open, so you'll have access to the bathroom. But that's always there for you too. Next, mail. We had an old fashioned mailbox on that wall that everybody had a key to. And now all we get is like junk flyers and, you know, things that nobody needs. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep track of that. If you guys get anything before every meeting, I will just set your mail out at the dais at your seat. That way, if you want to see the CML flyer, we thought they were going paperless, but they haven't made it there yet. So I'll just make sure you get all of that. Unless you really want a mailbox here, let me know and I will figure one out for you. Vehicles. The town has a couple of nice town vehicles. If you guys are going to any meetings in Denver, Boulder, anywhere, we always recommend that you use the town vehicle, because if there is an accident and they're on town business, but you're not in a town car, CIRSA will not cover you. So Jen at the front desk, just shoot her an email. I need the car Wednesday at 1. She'll make sure it's gassed up, it's washed, and it's ready to roll, and you just come pick up the keys. So that's always easy too.
Then if anything happens, it's on the town insurance, you're acting on our behalf.
Mhm.
But if you're in your own car, it will go through your own insurance first.
I have here resolutions, ordinances, and proclamations, and I'm not sure.
Brandon touched
On that, okay, I was like, I think that, additional roles. So in addition to being the Board of Trustees, you are also going to be the Liquor Licensing Authority, the Marijuana Authority, the Lions Urban and Renewal Authority, the Board of Appeals, and the Board of Ethics Commission. So you're gonna wear a lot of different hats. The liquor and marijuana are pretty stagnant and quiet. We don't have a lot of new businesses. They're all renewals. And the only reason that would come up is when, you know, renewal comes, we do a background check in with the sheriff's department, because I'm not gonna know if the cops were called to an establishment. So then they would say, hey, we've had some issues. If that happens, then that renewal would come to the board. Or a sales tax, or, you know, if there's something like that. Other than that, if it's status quo and there's, yeah, I'll just sign it administratively and it will go through. Special event permits for liquor are also administrative. They used to go before the board, and the board was like, there's something every other week and they're having to do these things. So they're like, just let staff take care of that. So that's also something we do. I also do elections, you know. I just had a throw on you. It did. I mean, you know, when Estes Park put up their results that night, they were saying they were at 34% returns. We had over 60% off. So it was great. It was a great election. Didn't have any trouble. As a matter of fact, Boulder County emailed me today. We're picking up the keys. So that's like the last box I have to check. Nice. And we are set to go. Any questions, Phil? I know that was a lot.
Yeah, just some administrative things, so
Yeah.
Will you just say the list of the other roles?
Yes. So it was liquor licensing,
Yeah.
marijuana licensing, the
Laura.
Laura Lions Urban Renewal Authority. They typically meet once a month, but if there's nothing on the agenda, we're, you know, we'll say, nope, just go ahead and cancel that. So like I was just, and if also too, since we've got your numbers now, if I'm like trying to get a special meeting and nobody's checking their email, I'll start texting you, go and check your email, I need some help. So that's it. The
I
board,
would say the Laura meant what? 6 times last year.
maybe, I don't even know.
we'd go like 2-3 months with no meeting, and then we'd
I
have.
don't remember this. During the regarding. I used to do it all the time.
And before you meet as that board, we'll have Brandon do a little crash course. Cause it's more like it's almost like the positive leadership, where there's information you follow. It's not whether or not you like the business, you know, it's whether or not their meetings are standards.
I have Board of Appeals. That comes from the Board of Adjustments. So let's say someone came before the Board of Adjustments, which is a different board, and they asked for setbacks to be, you know, relaxed, and they said no. Now they can appeal that to the Board of Appeals, which is the Board of Trustees.
And then from their district.
Does it come through before, does the district court?
Certain things do,
Some things do, but some don't.
some don't. Pretty rare you meet as the board of
Very
appeals,
Yeah,
but it's on your list of hats.
However, let me make it quick. I want to get Brandon to clarify that. You may have read in the big article yesterday, the lot splitting bill in the legislature. if that passes and we start getting block splitting administrative requests, they don't go to the PCDs, they're not gonna go to the board, they're gonna go to the Board of Justice.
Mm.
I think we need some guidance from Brandon as to what, if any of those would ever come to the Board of Trustees.
Okay. And the last one is the Ethics Commission. That one's kind of tricky. Some boards, it happens a lot, and some boards, it doesn't happen at all. And that will just be, it's kind of like, well, this board member's, is not behaving a certain way, so I'd like to file an ethics complaint. And then the board decides if they even want to hold an ethics hearing, and then, go from there. But like I say, there was one board, boy, it felt like every other agenda was an ethics complaint, and then this one, there wasn't one.
Yeah.
So it's it's hard to know, but that's hopefully we don't have to repeat this board again. Anything else? Any questions?
Are trustees automatically disqualified from serving on any commissions? So are people already off the PCDC, for example?
Yes. Those seats are now open. And we had one appointment, and I have not seen any other apps. I did get one today for UEB. But
Oh, he said they did.
yeah, he
I
came.
think you let me know if he was really gonna do that. He never said, so okay, that's why he did.
Yeah, I walked in, hadn't seen him in forever, so that was a nice surprise. Yeah.
Did you get the ethics signature page back? Because we handed those out at the first orientation.
I have not seen them.
Okay, so you guys need to read your code of ethics. I think it was in your packet.
Something else.
Oh, consumer virtual. Okay, I will get you.
Clarify with Brandon. It's happening whether a Board of Trustees member can serve on another commission. There's a provision in the LNC somewhere that says and it applies to all boards of commissioners, not just Board of Trustees. It says cannot serve on more than two.
Yeah.
It's in there somewhere.
No, that says that but I don't think that was referring to board. It was an individual. I can ask.
Yeah, we haven't clarified that.
Okay. Oh, also, if you want to reserve the room at anytime, let's say you're gonna have somebody here and you're gonna give them a tour of the park or something. Jen is also your girl. Just let her know. She will reserve the room for you and make sure you have the current temp code to get in. And also reach out to her. My team is up there is Brandy on utilities. Jen is at the front desk, and then Maria is my deputy clerk. So the four of us are at their disposal. If you can't get a hold of me, one of them will find me and make sure we get what you guys need.
And the temp code changes, and we do that on purpose. As you know, how many people come through here or other groups that meet, and we give it to LCF, and that person we gave it to is not gonna be there tonight, so they give it just gets too big. So it does change. We do not give you guys the permanent code for that reason. We don't want anyone ever who came into town hall after hours and manipulated information. So it's actually part of your own protection, but anytime you need a temp code, just ask Dolores, because it does change.
I think I'm good. I'm done.
Can I share my screen?
You sure can. I already gave you
you
that
did?
permission.
Okay.
You should be able to hop on there.
Okay, so
Let's see
then,
if it works.
thank you so much, Dolores. We appreciate that. And
You got it.
yeah, if you'll add to your list to send back the ethics.
Yep. And Amy needs one. Okay, we'll do. I will get that.
So the rest of today is going to be a finance overview. Mark and Greg have been through this a few times, but we pick up things every time, I think. And as you're gonna find out, government finance is different than the for-profit sector and how we do our accounting, so.
And I did send this slide to your email, so you'll have that
To refer back to, if any of you want a hard copy right now, or any paper to take notes, I'll make you a hard copy. Good? Yep. Okay, anybody need paper? Okay. Yep. And if you do, I'll grab it. I was fancy. Oh, what book for you, okay. My town phone.
Okay, so I'm just gonna give a little bit of background on myself. I believe I met most of you, maybe not quite Julie,
We can sort
a
of-
little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm Cassie, also Cassandra. I have 19 plus years in government finance. Almost 5 at the town of Lyons, this summer will be 5. Before the town of Lyons, I was with the city and county of Springfield for 8 years, I think. So lots of government finance experience. I'm originally from Montana and moved here to Colorado for 17 years, and then my husband's job gave him a really good opportunity in Montana. So I do work remote, and it works well. We've been doing that for about 2 years now, and I try to come up every month, every other month, every 6 weeks. But it depends on what's going on, and try to time it best, work with activities going on. But, yeah, and I'm available, email, Teams meetings, phone, anything you need. And even though I'm not in the same state, I'm still available.
She is a steadfast remote person. She
COVID did me well.
You are just fine.
So today we're just gonna go over a really high level of the town's finances, the 2026 budget, how we look at our finances. We'll look at the calendar, we'll talk about the Board of Trustees meetings as it relates to finance only, the documents you'll see from me, and then just some various resources. And I really would encourage you to stop me at any point. Let's make this open, stop, just talk over me, ask questions, because once you get out of here, it's probably all gonna just go over, circle back, and that's totally okay. So the way that government finance works is based on fund accounting. And so fund accounting is different from the way that they do things in corporate. Funds are a separate fiscal and accounting entity that are used to segregate resources to specific activities. So I like to think of them as a cookie jar or a piggy bank or bucket accounting, if you can hear. Each fund has its own piggy bank, cookie jar, or bucket. There's 3 types of funds: governmental funds, enterprise funds, and fiduciary funds. The town only has governmental funds and enterprise funds. Fiduciary funds are held for, we're acting as the agent holding the funds for somebody else. So we don't have those, but our governmental funds are tax and grant supported activities. So like our general operations, and we'll look at those various funds. And then enterprise funds they basically act like their own business, each one. We've got our water, sewer, electricity, and our stormwater. So here are the various structures of the town's funds. We've got those governmental funds. That's the majority of our funds. The general fund, the Parks and Recreation Fund, Conservation Trust Fund, which is a small fund that is, we'll get into a little bit more, but it is funded through the state lottery. Proceeds go there, and it's very specific to what we can and can't use it for. Generally, Parks and Recreation type activities. Excuse me. We also have a capital fund and a grant fund, and then our business loan fund is considered a governmental fund as well. Those are, if you've heard of the business recovery loan funds, we revolving loan funds, we do those small loans to our business community when they need them at 0. They've been 0%, but we're gonna, I believe, increase that. The direction is to increase that for a little bit to cover some of the administration. Enterprise funds, as I mentioned, we have our electric, our water and sewer fund, and also here it's called sanitation. That is a combined fund. You'll see them combined or separate in various municipalities. We combined ours to strengthen the financial capacity of it when our sewer fund.
Legally combined, but we still track them separately.
We track our revenues and expenses separately. We do not track fund balance separately. Yeah, revenues and expenses are separate.
That was done combined with trying to finance the construction of the water treatment plant last time. And the sewer wastewater fund didn't have enough revenue reserves on its own to carry that, so it was combined with the water fund. which was a stronger financially fund, so that's on your. And since that time, we had all the problems with the wastewater treatment. The water fund and from us to carry to sewer fund. If it had been on its own, it would have been at times in the red, which is
It
what
would.
it's supposed to be.
Enterprise funds can't ignore any red.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's a business, you're expected to raise fees.
Good question. What's the source of funding for conservation process? Does that come from the state?
Yeah, that's the state lottery funds. So we get funding from that quarterly and from the state, and it's based on lottery proceeds.
They're like peanuts though, right?
It's not a lot. It's not a lot.
Trying around 100,000 a year.
No, not even. It's probably more like
What's that, 40?
30 to 40,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, really? At one point it was.
Our fund balance,
Oh, our
you're
fund
thinking
balance.
our fund balance, and
Yeah.
that fund is.
Buy lottery ticket.
Yeah, it carries over, so it, what we don't spend carries over, and we typically try to build it up. And we use, a lot of times we'll use it for grant matches, or we used some of it this last year for the restoration of the Laverne Johnson Spring Bank activity, so recreational trail type things.
They don't like it used on operating expenses. They want it on either one-time expenses or.
But it is its own fund, and a lot of times it just transfers to it. You help utilize and strengthen capital. And another important thing is we can't typically, you're not intermingling revenues, so our sales tax isn't going into our electric, and our electric fees are not going to pay for our streets and things like that, so that's really important to think of its own bank, its own cookie jar. You're not sharing. Unless needed.
Unless you get into the next project.
Yes, and then you split the expenditures out, but there are times where the general fund may have to subsidize other funds, but.
Thanks.
For example, the stormwater fund. I've got $250,000 in it. The estimated cost of fixing the pole. Which $500,000, and if we don't get a grant from that. Falling, go on your streets, and you can get into mixed situations. It's and if we reduce that in Avenue, for example, it's the streets that disaster, but you wouldn't redo the street without doing drainage, so it's a mixed stormwater streets thing.
So each of these, in the next couple of slides, just to discuss the major revenue types that go into each fund. So our general fund, is the major source is taxes. So sales and use tax, and that's, as you know, sales and use tax for the town is 4%. So 2.5% of that goes to the general fund. Well, I guess
Yeah,
use tax is now different. But yeah, for the most part, sales and use tax, 2.5% goes to the general fund. Property tax.
1 cent to Barks.
Yeah, and one cent. Property tax is also a large source of revenue, just over $1 million that goes into the general fund. And then we have various fees, licenses, and building permits and things like that. We do get a little intergovernmental revenue. This cigarette tax is not much. We get about maybe 200 a month. And then the highway user tax, which comes from the state as well, from fuel taxes and
Which they're about to cut, right?
Potential, was it user tax or was the local marijuana
I think.
or the marijuana?
I read that they're looking at the highway users tax also.
Wouldn't surprise me at all, because they also dipped into, let's see, was it severance?
Yeah,
Severance
That's it.
as well, so they're trying to cover their deficits.
Just a procedural question. So when we raise the sales tax from 3.5 to 4,
Mhm.
do we have to indicate the allocation, or is it just proportional?
No, we specified that it was for capital purposes only. So then the blue there, you'll see that 0.5 is that capital, so that has its own fund and that it's every month when we get sales tax, that goes right over to the capital fund. Parks and Recreation gets 1% of the sales and use tax. So that helps fund those activities, I will say.
Which is kind of unusual for a lot of municipalities, that division was put in there by popular vote, by a vote of the voters of Lyons, the 1980s. And it was done to complete the purchase of Bowman Park. That part of Bowman Park was bought, that 1 cent tax, but after that was paid for, the 1 cent tax, it's just.
Was it Bone or was it Woodward Johnson? Then the parks, without it though, we would have to significantly cut our parks or raise all of our fees, which, wouldn't even cover. So without it, that fund would not, we wouldn't have the parks we do today.
There have been suggestions from time to time, including in comp plans, that we look at that and maybe put that into the general fund, but. One question, if anybody ever really wanted to do that, since the voters put it there to begin with, I think that was good, but nobody's really seriously proposed that. There's a big deficit in parks and.
Camping revenues are a high revenue source as well as parking fees and then of course we have our program fees and our shelter rentals, which. And the capital fund, this was created 6 years ago, maybe, I want to say. It was first created to fund large street projects. So the source of that funding was general fund transfers in. So this is one of the areas you can transfer to and from. So the general fund every year has transferred money into this fund to fund some of the larger street projects. We do now also bring in that 0.5 cent sales tax into there. So that is a source for future capital of any type. It could be the stormwater, it could be sewer. There is a little couple nuances if we are to use it and transfer it in with Tabor, which we will not even get into today, because that is a very difficult subject, but it's going to come up. And then our utility funds, and I should say, back to that sales tax, we haven't spent any of it. We've been getting it since the middle of 2024. We haven't spent any of it yet. So it is building itself up and will be available to use towards projects or debt service for large projects. And then our utility funds, major source of revenue are just the charges for services that we have to charge for, base fees, and then our usage charges. And then we do get tap and investment fees, but those are rare.
Anymore.
Yeah.
So one of the things when you're talking to the public that it's sometimes you have to educate is that the general fund and parks are funded by taxes for the most part and fees. The utility funds are purely fees. Those are not a tax. And people always say, don't know if your tax makes you buy for this, those aren't taxes. Those are fees. And the fees are to cover the actual cost to run the infrastructure and the operation and maintenance of those. There's no big giant, we aren't running it like a large electric company.
No, we're not.
It's not for profit.
No, it's not a for profit. We can have, we have reserves, but we need those. But in some communities, like we talked about orientation, that do have large water boards, they have a separate whole board to deal with that. And then the board that's trying to serve the people aren't trying to also run this company. And so they have separate boards for water, sewer boards, and those folks are running that like a corporation. So.
And one of the things to think about, and we've started to project through long range financial plans, is the operation and maintenance and future replacement costs for all of these. When you're thinking of charges for services, you're not just planning for today. We have to plan for tomorrow and 10 years from now. And we're trying to figure out the best way to build that out and plan for those future large costs, because they are very large with our small community. And so, you know, as we get into looking at the sewer treatment plant, and what it's going to cost to fix that and.
Water pump station.
Yeah,
There's these three big motors and each one is like 300,000.
And so it's really important to build out
Big ones.
and start collecting fees for tomorrow as well, because you don't want to be a municipality that doesn't raise fees for 10 years because you're doing just fine today. And then tomorrow you have some major project come up and you don't.
Some town in Boulder County did that.
Brookfield.
It's, yeah, not.
And they
yeah,
did all their, it was like a 50% increase at once, and that was.
They have been in Erie too. They didn't raise rates and then all of a sudden they had to raise 25% or something. And people went wild. So you will, as a board, have to decide, do we want to raise a little bit every year to stay ahead of those expenses?
Well, and then you're just keeping up with inflation. So
We started last year, we now have an annual inflation, all of them except.
yes,
But
It's a separate deal.
yeah, but as you said, that's just gonna cover.
That's gonna cover.
It's really not going to wait for that big. I mean,
One quick footnote on that. The water line that runs out to the big tank at the end of Apple Valley is 50 years old. It has had leaks from time to time. One of them, when they went and fixed the leak, they discovered that the pipe was sitting on rocks instead of being embedded in soft material. And I believe that in this year's budget, it's
the stuff.
carried it from last year. They're gonna basically do a study, dig down in several places and see what conditions it's in. If that is in jeopardy of breaking, that would be a future expense that we got to set aside for that.
So lots of discussions. I think, you know, as the sewer comes and those costs come, you know, we're gonna have some discussions. What makes sense for a town of our size and what doesn't.
Any questions on revenue types? We can make available to you if you want to know what's all involved with use tax or property tax or any of that, but you know, all of those are another whole class. So we're hitting the highlights today.
Yeah.
And when we get into budgeting, we will do more, but any questions just on this page? Yeah, oh, yeah, there's one.
In your budget packet, it has budget detail. The first page lists taxes for the general fund, and that's a big chunk of our revenue. Part of it, be careful and where the money really come from. That first section on the first page of the budget. They got to have page 22, and it's under.
She probably took up the stuff and we're using this word. Can you just put
Yeah,
it?
if you go to budget detail, look at the first page, that first section is where that's our money.
And we'll
Yeah.
go over this as well. It's
Yeah.
further in the doc, in the.
There are other things, but the best to make it correct right here in one.
So Conservation Trust, we already talked about that. That's the lottery funds. The grant funds, that's any federal, state, local, and private grants that we receive. And we typically segregate those and then make transfers into that fund if it's split fund with grant or like general fund and federal funds, we'll just transferring and fund it all out of one. And then the loan funds that we discussed for businesses. You typically don't see much. Expenditure types. So there's two types of major expenditures, operating and capital expenses. So your operating are your personnel, your supplies, your equipment, your day-to-day stuff, your professional services, which we do have a lot of contractual services. Our sheriff being the biggest one.
Yeah.
And then repair and maintenance type costs. Capital are gonna be your large projects. So for infrastructure, think of it anything over 10,000. For all other, it's typically any like over 5,000. This is a very common threshold, although I would argue now with all the inflation we've had, it really should, it's low, but it's still very common. And then anything with a useful life over a year. So examples, new construction, land acquisitions, repair and rehab, equipment replacement. You'll see Dave's group have a lot of equipment replacements. But those are our capital expenditures. So then we're going to talk about fund balance. This is actually my favorite topic. I don't know why, because it always is, well, this is how much money we have spent. This is how much we have in the piggy bank. So remaining funds in excess of all expenditures at the end of the year. And it's basically, think of it like your checking account, what you have at the end of 2024, 25, rolls over to the next year. So
I always think of it as a checking and savings, but yeah, kind of like, if at the end of the year, we all zeroed out our checking and put anything in excess over to savings, it's kind of like that. So the fund balance is from ongoing, what is in our piggy bank, the long-term piggy bank, not to spend.
yeah, so you have your beginning fund balance at the beginning of the year, and then you get your current year revenues and you have your current year's expenses, take those out, and then that leaves you with your ending fund balance. Best practice is that should not be used at the beginning of the next year to fund your ongoing and your reoccurring expenses, because it is not guaranteed you're gonna have fund balance every year. So you should use your current year revenues to fund your current year expenses. Best to use fund balance to fund emergencies, capital projects, one-time things. So that is definitely something that I try to stay clear of doing. And we have, so that's been great. We do have operational reserve requirements, so rainy day fund, if you want to think of it that way, emergencies. We do keep 3 months of operating reserve as our requirement for each of the operational funds. So this applies to, basically any fund that has personnel with it. So your general, electric, stormwater, water, sewer, and parks. So we have 3 months to operate, that if something would go wrong, we would have at least 3 months to operate in this. And so anytime that I'm calculating fund balance, I'm always saying we have this amount in excess of reserve. So that's always what I'll always give you in excess of reserve.
You can only continue that.
When I got your electric was in trouble, and then we got that kind of straightened out, and then water.
Maybe it was close after the Honeywell wastewater.
Oh, that's it then.
We were headed that way, and
It would have been short too.
I think we raised sewer rates to prevent that from happening.
So another reserve you'll hear discussed is the flood reserve. As you all know, they had flood in 2013 and we received significant federal and state resources for that. That project or that disaster is still not closed out by FEMA. So and we still have not received all of our funding. So they're still reviewing our reimbursement requests and designating things that are ineligible. And there is the possibility that once FEMA has closed the entire disaster for the state, that they could do an audit up to 3 years after. The feds can do it, and they can claw that money and say, if they say was ineligible, this was ineligible, this was ineligible. They would be going to the state first, and then the state would have to come after us, and the state's the ones approving our reimbursement request. So
So we would
hard to
go to
say.
the states and say, states, we
Work
need to
with us here.
negotiate this clawback because you said this was okay to submit to the feds. So we would go to them, I would hope, and say, and
In the worst case scenario where that happens, and we're 10 years or so away from literally these feds can make that on. Do you think the state's desperate search for money in the future cause them to say, nope, we need to give X amount back from the town that we can't afford it?
You know, we have like to feel
wants to the
The
state.
state has bet back,
Yeah.
the state turns to us and says, we want to use this, you approve it, and they say, yeah, that's the way it used to work, but now we're.
I don't know, I suppose they could, but I can't imagine they would, because we have an agreement and we've been paying back in good faith as soon as FEMA pays. As soon as we get reimbursed, then we turn around and pay the state. And the balance right now is, what do we still owe?
Oh, that's not on this one. But for this reserve, our goal is $1 million.
Yeah.
And we're almost at it. At the end of 20 six, we will be at 950,000. So we will no longer set aside, we'll just hold it until the disaster is deemed and we're clear of audit, and then hopefully we have $1 million left over to use on capital projects.
That's the federal government. When you think about bureaucrats, whose job it is to claw that money. I just think that every time there's a new natural disaster in the United States, I go, "Well, there's one more thing that's not worried about, and we just got to worry about this."
That's kind of what I was thinking too. That's a little bit, yeah, we're not in their, in their crosshairs really, because there's always gonna be decisions.
There's someone, there's somebody with a nightshade.
I know.
DC.
There are fewer female boys than that.
There's fewer few. At the conference I was just at, they said that, they're making it harder too for a disaster to even be eligible.
Yeah,
They're gonna start, it's probably gonna shift that FEMA will continue to shrink. And the states are gonna have to pick up their own disasters.
they just denied a couple.
The old Durango
Yeah.
floods and fires we do.
And that's what's Pagosis rate. And so the state's gonna have to figure out how to fund some of this disaster.
States broke.
Just, so you know, though, Hurricane Katrina is not closed out yet.
Yeah.
The
so-
Oklahoma City bombing, which was the very first, is not closed.
So
So,
can you repeat the timing?
Yeah, so once they close out our disaster,
the state,
the state and the feds,
Which might be.
well, I don't know.
it's still open, obviously. I would say I'm gonna say another 3 to 5 years.
Is it from the date of the last project finished? Was it the second Avenue Bridge?
Well, not for us.
No, it's the whole state, the
The
whole
contract with
2013.
FEMA is with the
flood
state, not
disaster.
with us. We are a sub-recipient of the state of Colorado. And so it's when the state of Colorado closes out disaster 4145, which was the Front Range floods. But our individual projects, I think we had 34 FEMA projects, and I think we've only been reimbursed 13 or 14. So we're still, maybe this week.
This week we got some.
This week we got a few.
Crazy, but
Is it by project that you?
And so they're still, that's why Tracy's still working 10 to 15 hours a week, every week, because she still has weekly meetings with the state to go through every project, what is still made.
and we are so fortunate to have her and that knowledge stay with the town, because I will tell you, even from a finance
That's what I
perspective,
do fun.
I could not easily pick that up.
Yeah.
We're so lucky.
I remember the comment was made one time, I thought it was kudos to you and to
Grant project.
Connie Sullivan at the time, who said that, in particular about crossing the T's and crossing the I's, I think everybody was.
Oh, yeah. And that's why if a callback would happen, it would be from the feds to the state. Saying, we're not gonna cover this, it's missing something. And then the state would probably come to us and say, we're not gonna pay you because you're missing something.
But by then they would have paid us and they would say,
They said you can't come back and say, well, we didn't authorize the.
Yes.
Splash pad.
Yes. Oh, it's lower than that. It's like, where is the $100 invoice for this purchase?
Wow.
Oh, no, that's why all the FEMA records, every project has three ring binders that are like this big. And then they're all electronic too, but they said keep a hard copy for the office of, or what is the office of budget, or OMB. Yeah. They said if they come in, they will only use paper and they will, open up all those notebooks and be asking you questions. So there's only 3 of us that were here for the flood to answer any questions. Dave Cosgrove, myself, and Tracy wasn't even here for it. She was here after.
Your work's done.
That's all there, but
I interviewed all
Yep.
of the books guys that composed a daily and hourly log of what they did on the emergency stuff. Should not be, I think. One of them kept written records, we had to recreate their stuff.
and you have to have, what was the average wage that week? in the nation, yeah, it's a lot. So, so there's, so the new law is, it used to be they had 10 years to claw back after a disaster. They changed it to 3. So that's better. So if they could close out, the state could close out in the next 3 to 5 years, the feds only have 3 years to claw back or it's done. So then we'll have this bucket if we don't need to reimburse anything. But this is just up FEMA. FEMA is right around, I don't know, up to around $75 million. So million's not a very huge number, but for us, it was a reasonable number.
Do we know how much this still is?
Yeah, well, it changes every
Yeah.
year. We just got.
We just got a couple, we just got 4. I'd have to check with Tracy.
I think she said we are somewhere around of the 9 million. Oh, I thought she said the 10, right, 9 to 10 million left
No.
paid.
Oh, paid, I think we're, yeah, I didn't.
It changes by the month.
I know in the audit, we categorized 3.9 million as due within a year, but even though that's dependent on the things, but that's not all of it.
So it's like that is around just a little over a third of the project.
So the check comes from FEMA in the town. It's just a pass.
The check comes from the state, which includes a federal portion and a state portion. It comes from the state to the town. Then the town turns around and reimburses the state
Because they upfronted us the money.
because they upfronted us. So instead of them
It's complex.
it's so that audit trail is important though.
So
The
FEMA,
reason for it.
FEMA at the time of our disaster paid 75% and the state was supposed to pay 12.5 and the town was 12.5. We went to the town and begged and said, we cannot afford 12.5 of 75. And they said, then you do 2.5. That was our portion of our disaster. It's a pretty good number, 2.5% of 75 minutes. And so,
It's good leverage.
yeah. And, so we didn't, when we talked about that reserve on the last slide, there were 3 months of just operating reserves. The first month after the flood, we spent $1 million on just debris. He had 3 years of reserves when the flood hit. We spent all of it in the first month on debris. And then you have to pay for the project as you're doing it and then wait 10 years for reimbursement. But we couldn't do the first project. So we went to the state and said, we need an advance. So they gave us, over time, they gave us $9 million in advance.
Kind of like a line of credit.
Yeah, and now we're paying that back, and we're paying it back as we get reimbursed. Now it's our agreement.
Right.
And
So
luckily they don't charge you things.
Yeah.
We both have skin in the game here. They check everything we ever submitted and then they submit it to the Fed. So if this happens, they're there too. And I'll go back to them and I will fight with them if the board wants me to say, nope, you're in this too. Let's
Yeah.
share it.
Yeah.
Half and half.
Any questions on the flood reserves?
It'll be fun if whoever's seated win the million.
I know, right?
So this is just a general calendar of the finance year and what happens in a calendar year. We, of course, are on a calendar fiscal year and which doesn't always align with the state and the federal, which kind of makes it messy, but those deadlines are, those years are there for your reference, but January to hopefully June is audit time, but sometimes it does go into July. So right now I'm knee deep in audit and we do have a contractor that assists with the financial statement preparation. He's a CPA. And luckily he has also been helping since flood time as well. So he's an older gentleman, very, very knowledgeable, but he does assist me because I am a one-person show in finance, so very, very that way. So he's helping me now and we're working through audit stuff and hope to present that to you in June. And then right after that, we go right into budget time and we start preparing the next year's budget. That's July to September timeframe. And then we will bring that budget and review it with you all, and suggestions, comments, things happen. We adjust the budget in the October timeframe, and then we typically adopt the budget in November.
And all of these had deadlines by the state.
Yeah, there's state deadlines in there. I have to provide you with the draft budget by October 15th. And then we have to adopt before we certify our property tax mill levy, which is due to the county by December 15th. So we really back into a lot of deadlines with the
We
budget.
usually have a couple of budget only meetings in
Mhm.
September,
Yeah.
October.
Yeah, where we work through staffs.
But there's not enough time anyway.
And I think what else is a little different about municipal is, we don't start from, it's not like you guys build from a zero budget every year. The requirement is that the staff, Cassie and I, have to present to the board a balanced budget
On October.
on October 15th. And so when we give it to you, it's done, it's balanced. And so then you guys, and we're building it based on what you're gonna set for priorities.
Mhm.
So we will have a balanced budget by October. You guys then take it and massage it as you want to on whatever we've missed. We try to make it
We
really,
do, we try to align with what the board wants before October 15th.
Yes.
Because we have such a short time frame to fix things by then, and there's a lot of moving parts, so we really try to align with the Board of Trustees before that time, because it does get messy when you're making a lot of last minute adjustments. So I've tried to even do like a pre-budget workshop where we look at capital, or we discuss maybe some operational things that you'd like to see, and then we build it based on.
We also get citizen input when,
We
God,
do.
we've gotten more and more each of the last.
Yeah, we send out a
Good.
survey, and usually that's end of August, beginning of September, and a couple of questions.
so we try to make budget, you were part as a newcomer, try to make it as simple as
You were
streamlined.
further along than I expected to be, and we massaged it less than I would have expected to.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
In your experience with Broomfield and other places, would you say that our budget process is mostly like theirs, or do you?
it is done before. There's less massaging by the council, the city council,
Which one?
very minimal,
Which one?
Bolton or Broomfield. Very little, they have that communication with staff, and. You know, and I'm just gonna be really honest, it's hard sometimes for councils and boards not to get into the very smallest weeds. Like I can just think of an example of a $5,000 capital art budget in a $30 million cap, you know, and it's very difficult sometimes, so to pull yourselves out of those weeds, but that's why it is really important to align before. See the capital before. But no, there is very, very, very minimal changes, once the draft is delivered to, in that.
So my two communities too. It's the majority of your budget, I mean, you've got your capital projects, which you'll identify and we'll put what we can toward those, but it's really mostly operational.
And it's a trust in staff to know that staff hears you. We've had these discussions. We know what your priorities are. We've had workshops and discussions throughout the whole year to know.
It's
What
very
is
different.
needed. Because there's not a lot that we have
So massage.
to play with, right? That we need our operations. If there's major changes in operations that need to happen, those discussions need to happen before, before I'm building this budget.
And some of it's also being in alignment on expectations.
Yeah.
On our projections, are we going to be conservative about this, or are we going to be more generous about that?
Mhm.
How likely do we think it is for something to happen to us this year?
Those are the early
Yes.
discussions. That's the first one we have with you. Cassie will bring forward what's the sales tax projections, what are we seeing for trends, what's CPI looking like, those things.
Yeah.
And then you guys decide, are we gonna, we'll bring you what other communities around us are doing, so we stay employment competitive with our neighbors. And, yeah.
And you'll see sales tax every month, so you'll know where we're trending compared to last year, and
And Cassie's a very conservative budget.
I am a very conservative, and part of that,
No, it's good.
it is true, a part of that means, that we do get a little more rollover every year for those, because it is better to be more conservative. Now, if we're in a situation where we have major expenditures that need to happen, we might have to try and dial that in a little further. But I am very conservative. I always,
This year, our assumption projecting this was that revenues would be flat.
for sales tax, yeah.
Sales tax compared to last year, whereas in recent years, kind of unlike some of the Golders or other places, ours were still slightly trending up.
What has saved us is the online sales and delivery. So when, if you're not aware, when you buy from Amazon and it's delivered to your house, Lions gets that sales tax. Home Depot, appliance deliveries,
We get it, but
We
if you
get it.
go, if you go to Longmont and buy it, they get it.
yeah, if you have a.
So it's.
if you deliver
it's
to an Amazon
it's
box,
a benefit. It's a benefit to
It
it.
is. Yeah, and you'll see, I break it out. Yeah, it's amazing the amount of revenue that we do get from online.
So that's why we've done better. than sleepers,
Well,
because we live a little.
Cause nowhere.
Perhaps, but I think, a lot of some of the neighbors might have some of those big box stores and, when those big box stores don't do well or when they close, nothing's.
I think that's some of it in that people at home, I didn't drive half a mile over Home Depot here, you might as well order a fence up and drive 10 miles. And so, it does make it, so I think ours sales have held up better at that point. It just, this last month, there's some weird fluctuations.
Yeah,
Strange one time, things, but
very strange. Very strange.
I wanted to.
No, well, I can't tell you who they are, but they're higher end brands. Higher end brand.
They would have to be, that would think.
79.
oh, you might, because it's coming fairly soon, you're not talking about the rollover situation.
Yeah, so that's coming.
Oh,
I got that.
good.
Only one.
Question for you.
Yeah.
You see. Benefit of citizens budget advisory committee, your predecessor tried to start one of that, that's for them. Or do you, I can tell that look in the face, it's just gonna muddy the waters, right?
It does muddy the waters, sometimes significantly. And the additional work on staff, especially staff with one,
I thought it was
is very good. No, that's
It
not.
was Jill. Huh?
It was just.
Okay.
No, that's why I tried, let's utilize surveys, let's utilize, so everybody can have a say.
Otherwise-
In my experience, it's not a favorite thing. Yeah.
I would never.
But I think when you do that, you get 3 people versus.
And it's very difficult to find people with the government finance mind as well, because it is so different from corporate finance.
I was the budget liaison, we tried that. But then board liaison, to the citizens budget advisory committee, I was gonna know about it and so.
And
And it didn't work.
And then, they were gonna review the monthly financials and stuff and give comments, but we have a lot of seasonality in Lions that's really hard to explain. When January, February, March comes out, our numbers look very different than July and August. and September.
Well, and we have a lot of transparency already. And you'll see that in some upcoming slides on what I do present monthly. You just have to dig for, and I don't want to say dig, but you have to have that mindset where you're looking, here is a list of every single invoice we paid, every single one. Every 2 weeks, you will see that. So it's good. There's not hiding it.
Yeah, sure.
And if you look at the payables and
Tough question.
the two things, the one says payable, the one says invoices.
Unpaid invoices.
That will show you the purpose of what's. I've always looked at them. If you look at them and you see something there that, why do you pay $50,000? Still more than mechanic. Rather than ask it during the board, better.
Just.
Email staff and they can make it better.
We'll tell you in a second. Send you whatever. because I even get some weird ones and I'll be like, oh, why did we spend $500 at Party City? But it's because they're doing a senior.
It's for the seniors event. Yeah, that they have also.
They have their budget,
Yeah.
so it's, but yeah, you do see some odd things. The one thing I just wanted to mention about the calendar is with the state and the feds being different. Some things do get a little complicated, like with this congressional directed funding is for fiscal year 20. What's the latest one, 27, which is actually, I'm trying to remember how this works. It'll be for their next fiscal year. It's later than ours, yeah.
Yeah.
And, but it does sometimes create some confusion with that and the state's budget getting adopted in the summer when we are in the ours. It's just,
Yeah, it does.
if they make a big change, like state funding in the middle of the year, it could have a significant effect on our current budget.
And they, process it.
It happened to us last year when they cut the marijuana.
Well, they did it for them, it wasn't mid-year, but for us, that's was.
Only $71,000, but I'm pretty sure.
Is there? Why don't?
Because we're a statutory town.
So that just changed.
Other community, well,
I have never been, and I've never heard of another that doesn't use that, but they do. There are others. I've seen other budgets from other states that have different reasons, but yeah. I would say it doesn't add enough complexity to make it, to make it. So now we're gonna go into the 2026 budget, which you have the binder in front of you. I apologize, it doesn't have tabs. But this is the data. These charts that I'm gonna show you is the data that's included in that budget. At the very end is a lot of accounts, I believe. Yes, that's every single account that we have that we receive revenue or expenses. I'm happy to sit down with you at any time to go through every one of those details or any one of those details that you have questions on, but those are all the accounts that we have in the various buckets.
It's worth mentioning, because I was really confused by this. That when an employee's time is split between various
Yes.
enterprise funds.
It's, yes, all, because we are so small, every individual wears so many hats that impact the various different funds. So for me, for example, my time is allocated between all the different funds because I do the finances for all the different funds. Victoria as well, the Dolores as well. So one person, the only person that I can think of that's 100% anywhere is Lisa. She's 100% in the general fund because that's planning and building. Doesn't do the enterprise. Yeah. So there's not many of us that are 100% allocated to one fund. We're even the public works guys, they are all the enterprise funds, some of the general funds. So
When you look at the book, you'll see an employee or a particular fund and it'll be employee and the benefits added and all that. And it's.
yeah.
It's split. We have an allocation sheet too.
Which I mean, for purposes of this, you'll see things as a whole. We're not gonna look at the various funds.
Every year
During the budget.
we review, we look at every staff and Dave has to say how much time is spent by this person on electric waters, and we do it actual every year. So, because people change and their skill set change and we move them.
But you don't keep like time cards.
It's an estimate. It is a budget. No,
We do some too.
well, we do
No,
pension,
what
but we
I'm
don't
saying
do
is-
project time accounting.
Yeah, so a point of Dave's people are split between public works and parks and rec. But he doesn't like, he say at the end of the week, I work 35
No.
hours in parks and rec and 5 hours.
There's no true up. That would be in
They
a.
estimate what percentage of their time they spend. That's very.
That's how it's audited. So this slide here is the budget for all the funds. broken out by fund. So you can see the revenue in the kind of orange and the expenses are that gold color. Anytime you see revenues not as high as expenses, typically that means capital projects, one-time fees. We're utilizing that fund balance, that piggy bank from the prior year to do those one-time things. We should not be using them for operational expenses. So anytime you see that here, that's typically what that means. And there is a capital section in that book that.
So it gets me more accurate to call operating.
No, this isn't operating because it also includes capital.
You have it in there as well.
Okay, this is total budget by fund. But this one is operating. This one is your operations by fund. So this is just your personnel, your supplies, your services. And you can see this one is where you should see the red higher than the expenses. Where it's very, very close, you can see is parks and recreation. And that's why I say that sales tax is very important for this, or increasing fees is very important to watch in this account, or cutting expenses. So this does not include any capital of any kind. And that's the one that we are very close to. Then with stormwater, but that one is a very small fund and doesn't see as much action. Yeah, that's what it looks like for budgeted as fund. And I will say with parks in all of these, a lot of times when it's comes down to year end and audit, you don't usually see them neck and neck like that. You're gonna see the savings or, personnel savings, or we didn't spend as much money as we budgeted we were going to, or we received more revenue than we thought we were going to. So you don't really see that line by, neck and neck like that.
Cassie will put this in our monthly reports here as well. You'll see these charts.
Yeah, you'll see.
Every month.
So this is the pie, I think that, Mayor Browning was talking about, or one of the pies. So this is your revenue for all the funds and what makes up those various revenue sources. You can see intergovernmental is our large source there. And that's just because of our grants. We do receive a lot of, that one's charges for services. And that one is because of the utility funds, the charges for services and the fees. So that makes up a big chunk of the revenue. But again, that revenue can't be used for general governmental purposes. It's just for the utility funds. So that's the majority of that charges for services is from water, wastewater fees, things like that, direct fees. Taxes is 39% of our income. So property tax, sales and use tax, some of the smaller ones we discussed. And then the other revenue category, Mayor Browning, that's one of the other because it just combines so much. There are certain things we'll pull out of it though and report on, but building revenue is a big one there. Rental income, our port fines, things like that, interest income, which has been great the past few years, but that is now declining with the feds and their rate changes. So we'll see a decline in those. So you see the small sliver of intergovernmental, that's grants. And that is because majority of the grants were budgeted in the prior year. When they don't get used, then they roll over. And we'll discuss that in a bit. And we definitely have more grants than 75. I was going to say lots more. So sales tax, just in particular, we do not collect our own sales tax. We cannot. Because we are a statutory town, the Colorado Department of Revenue collects that for us. The sales tax, businesses pay it directly to the state. The state turns around and remits the portion of Lions sales tax directly to us. It does take 2 months. So we are 2 months behind. So right now in April, we just received the sales tax for February. So come in May, we're going to be receiving the sales tax for March. So I'm always behind in my reporting to you, but it's as soon as I can get it, I do report correctly too. The difference here is that we have our local retail marijuana sales tax that we receive that is paid directly to us from our current 3.
Go ahead.
Am I?
Go ahead.
We are losing 1. We have we are losing one, so we will have to stop reporting on sales tax from them, so. Sales tax revenue is extremely confidential. I signed a memorandum of understanding with the state. Victoria and I are not allowed to share any data numbers specific to a business. And you can share general information if there are 3 or more businesses. So when we only had 2 marijuana dispensaries, I couldn't say, oh, we received $10,000 in revenue this month from marijuana, because we had 2 only. When we have 3, I could report and say, we received $15,000 in marijuana tax this month. Now we're gonna lose one, so we're back down, so I won't be able to. A specific amount. That is going to come into play for our mental health fund, which we'll get into.
Yeah, we get to leave.
We're gonna have to figure out a different methodology.
Right.
Also that, which is my concern, but that's okay. Yeah, we'll figure it out. So
We heard that, we found out today that Denmark is, what's the right word, they said, they are turning their state license back.
One. We've had 3 this month.
Right, they made it that long too. But, so now though, they won't really show up.
So it shows up on the balance sheet, it's just.
it shows up as sales tax revenue.
Just bundled.
It just bundled in there, yeah. I didn't piece it out on purpose and create another account on purpose. I couldn't when I first started. And then I was able to see the success or, from the various, and just knowing that it wasn't that much of an increase adding another one. So, that's been something.
During the period that we've had a 3 dispensary limit, has anyone else expressed an interest in picking up our licensing account where it'll become available?
No, the industry's really going, this is pretty common trend, they're seeing it's weeding out to just a few. No, we haven't had anybody showing.
Well, we have a maximum 3, that's all we are.
That's what I'm asking, during the time that we've had 3.
Yeah,
has
but
somebody
there's
come in and said, I'd like to step into
that we only have 3.
I was thinking about Zen Road, but no, they can't either, it could be a grow, but not be a. So,
The same, just, I guess,
step,
for like liquor, that like breakout. Why?
it does,
Yeah, so there are various codes that I can pull and say, okay, liquor sales were X amount. But if we only, it could take into account other. Like, it would take probably spirit hounds, it would have, it could be a lot of. But if there was one specific, we only have one clothing store or something that was designated. Or a grocery store, so, I could report on that.
we can't disclose anything that could identify one separate business's income.
Sales, which you can, if you say something, you can back into that number and. Yeah, so it's highly confidential. And you'll see some scenarios where. Yeah, where we have to make decisions if I know sales tax isn't being paid, what can we do as a local municipality? You're gonna see that soon.
It's coming soon.
It's coming soon.
One.
They're coming. Colorado Department of Revenue is the enforcement. They are the regulation. They are, the educators. It's not us. And there is a fine line there, so we'll get into that a little.
Yeah,
bit
we're gonna
more.
do.
But
But
yeah,
no, so once a business is if they're not paying, there becomes a limit, at which point the only thing we can do is take their business license.
and then if they continue to operate, fine them for operating without businesses. Definitely not something we ever want to get into,
I had
but
to do it a couple of times in recent years. It's
Yeah.
not fun, and now we have another one, and we're prepping that unless it gets paid between now and the next meeting.
and I
They're
think,
gonna be,
in the past, we haven't been as vigilant as, eagle eyes on, and businesses you know, may or may not have paid sales tax and, you know, maybe it wasn't tracked monthly. But it has been for quite some time now, so.
There's one other confusing component to sales tax. Businesses can pay monthly, quarterly, and a few can even do annual. And so again,
They're very small.
They're very,
yeah, every month is like, you don't, if it goes up a little bit, it might be because one of those quarterlies paid. And when we talk about it, it always feels so cryptic, and we're not trying to be, but we have to sign formal legal affidavits. So we take it seriously.
and report on sales tax as a whole
Yeah.
and
So, yeah, when it comes down to this business license, it won't even, we can't control anything with sales tax. That's only the state. So our only recourse, if someone is not, is to take the business license. And so,
We get straight on that line, Lions then, but we crush them to Dino country. Didn't pay sales tax for a long time. We looked into what we can do about that, and at that time, the code only allowed us to deny a new business license. It didn't allow us to revoke a business license. We changed the code specifically so that now if the business gets too far delinquent, you can revoke their business license, which ironically enough was in the process of being done with their successors at Iron Bar. When I think the day before that the business license was gonna be revoked, they,
but in sales tax also, that is paid by the person purchasing.
yeah, it's not the business.
It is
paying
not the
it.
business paying it.
So you're.
a trust fund.
They're paying it.
Essentially,
They are. Everything on.
do it that way.
Doing, you and I are paying it when we make that transaction, they should be taking that percentage and putting it here. And so when they're not paying it over that time, where's it gone? And it is illegal, period. And so it feels heavy-handed, and we hate to have to be that person, but we rely on sales tax to fix our roads and our infrastructure. And so
And there's the fairness of it. If one restaurant is paying as they should, and the other way, next door is pocketing 9.1%, that's not a fair competition.
So it will maybe offer it, but that's the only recourse we have if someone's not going to, is the business license. Unless somebody thinks it's something. Because we have people who operate without those too. Sometimes they'll go till the 11th month when we're saying, oh my God. You levy fines along the way, or? We can. What we do now is we backed up our whole process and start notifying them in October. And hope to have the majority of them paid by December. But I'll tell you, we have businesses that's like, if you don't send me an invoice or a notice, they won't do it. And I mean, we've had most of our, some prevalent businesses go like 5 years without a business license, and it's like, really, this is really, it's $50. It's $50, I know, but it's an area that takes a lot of time and energy and hand holding for the business community, but we're getting better.
So this next slide is our historical sales tax and what's in this. But you can see in 2024 where we implemented the half sales tax increase, that's where you see that large jump there. And the 2025 numbers right now are unaudited, but pretty in line with the budget there, so. We just seeing decrease expected, so. This just shows you the sales tax rate in Lions and various components as well. Property tax is a large component of our revenue as well. This gets a little bit tricky because we have a voter approved mill levy of 19.522. We can't actually levy that amount due to Tabor restrictions. So they call it a credit to the taxpayers. Credit sounds like a great thing, but we can't do it. Well, we could do it if we decided to use it for a specific capital purpose. But the department or DOLA has told us that that's very fair.
It doesn't show up in the taxpayers.
Yeah, it doesn't, it's just, we're not levying. But you can see how the increases in property taxes have gone over the years. In 2025, the board opted to not increase, the property tax, so it stayed flat, and then we saw the.
We've done that twice. We've done that twice in the last 10 years, just to give local particular businesses, but also we paid most of the property tax to give them a small break. Barely notice, but we've done it twice.
So run this by me again, so 19.522. Are you saying we can reach that, but only if it's for a capital project?
Yeah, so we are limited to the 5.5% revenue. It's not growth, without growth. Like, so if we had a large, when the hotel comes, we'll get all of that. So without our growth properties, but there is a stipulation, which I inquired in Dolo, my first budget season, when you were on one of your terms, I believe, COVID time. And they basically said you can do it, but it's rare. So that 4.3.85, we could say, no, we're gonna levy that, and it's gonna be for this street. We're gonna levy that, and it's gonna be for this stormwater project. And then, yeah, or the sewer plant, yes.
Even property tax?
No.
For sewer, for your house?
Yes. Yeah, we wouldn't be an enterprise.
Yeah, we
No.
go out of enterprise status.
But if you don't need to,
Yeah.
then you go to the voters if you need that.
Yeah.
So it's not the end of the world if you go out of enterprise
No,
status, and
no.
it's just, sometimes you have to worry about timing, but yeah, there are a lot of capital improvement mill levies out there. Just like there's a lot of capital improvement sales tax. But yeah, it does throw a wrench into things.
Yeah, we can talk more about this.
You know what the projection would be if, like, in 2026, we were at the.
If the extra 3 mills, I have to look.
Was it four?
Well, in 2025, 2026, it's 2.
That's how much.
Yeah.
We could still increase it almost 3 without any voted.
Yeah, if it was used.
If it was just.
I would say, the reward 6+ terms now, if you have designs and running for re-election, think twice about that.
Well,
It's
that's why he said twice.
Was the business. Was commercial. It was the business community.
Oh, here, your next one will show.
So, Town of Lyons property tax payers, what they pay in their levy, we are a small percent. We are not even quite 13%. And so when we cut our mills and nobody else does, it hurts us, but they've got these large mills, they're not doing anything. The taxpayer really doesn't see a lot. Because the majority of it is, of course, the school district. The fire district has, the fire district has increased theirs. So I think last year the fire district was like closer to 15 or 16, and now it's 22. They got that phased in one. So yeah, it's out of 127 mills, or 16.5 of those. It's we operate a whole town on that. So it's that can be eye-opening for people when they're
We gotta go to our community.
I think, we've tried to do better and better.
We show a dollar bill
Yeah,
and how much of it paid just comes to us is this. Why are those, one's mill and one's percent.
So
13% of your property tax.
which also pays for sheriffs. So sometimes that's the
which
one thing, right? Like
in that
Boulder County is not the sheriff for the town.
No, this is.
We are paying the town is utilizing this property tax mill to pay for the contractual services of the sheriff, which have increased significantly and are going to continue.
This is why when we talk about like wildfire mitigation, we're already paying the county. So do we want to also, not just welfare, but that's an example. We are paying taxes to the county and the fire district already, right? And so why do we offer more things from us when we're paying the county to do it? Let's keep putting pressure on them to do more,
Yeah.
do more, do more. We're already paying the county, we pay more in RTD tax to the county than the service we get back. You know, those kinds of things, and we're trying to keep our eye on that. We have a sustainability, we pay for sustainability in the county. What do we get back? What we pay, we get $15,000 in an economic development. That's, and it's like 18%. If you
We're
took,
gonna be pushing $1 million in our sheriff's budget.
yeah, this year.
That's
I-
not almost.
Quick footnote, I noticed that the new mayor of Netherland by 3 votes.
Yes.
That was one of her issues that she ran on, is she wants to re-examine their contract with the sheriff.
Oh, yeah, because theirs went
Theirs
sky
is
high. Theirs is different than ours.
They have to have people, because they have a lot of homelessness and a lot of unhoused people by choice.
And there's.
Well, they're just born
Their
there.
response time.
And
what?
we
Just
can't
lost everything.
So take your taxes, take these numbers, you know, that's what you're paying. Where it's going to.
Just so that people know, we had extensive negotiations with the sheriff's office that underrated more or less to passing. Victoria spent a lot of time negotiating down their charges and hours they covered and everything, and they reduced it some for this year, but.
So they let us split the cost over 2 years.
Yeah.
But we did get a refund for last year when we didn't have a,
We pushed that, we said, we didn't, our sergeant was gone for like 3 months on
a
something.
refund.
And we said, we should get a quarter refund for his time. We didn't get that service, so we did, but we keep on it.
So, so these are the expenditures for all the funds. So this is all expenditures, including debt service and capital. Personnel is 30% of all expenditures when you break that out, which I think I have enough slide into operating. It becomes a little bit larger, but, you can see we don't have a lot of debt. The main debt that we have left is our wastewater treatment plant that we are now going to have to
Add to.
if we're gonna fix that up. Yeah. But yeah, you can see the yellow is services, contractual services. That includes the sheriff. That includes we pay significant amount for our wastewater treatment plant contract operator. That's really high. I mean, there's just
Street sweeping service,
Town attorney.
the town attorney,
Judge.
anybody who's a contract.
we brought in our engineering services, which has saved us a significant amount.
Half
It
of
has-
what we pay the other contract.
which has been great.
And then we looked at it, we evaluate this all the time too, with, we like planning staff, it's a better contract. We review those, but,
Inspection services.
Inspection services now, yeah, which.
those were in-house for a while. We tried that one both ways, yeah.
But here's our operating, so this is where you'll see even that yellow is, you know. If you were to turn some of those contractual services into staff, your warrant would be significantly higher.
We did an in-house police department, you see that red
Mhm.
section. going in. So it's hard to, if you look at personnel percentages, it's hard to compare us to like Longmont that has their own police department. They're gonna have a lot more. But
So this is our fund balance and our reserves. So this is budgeted for 2026. When we
Sorry,
fund
yes.
2026.
How would you compare us to other municipalities? What metric or two would you suggest that we just?
For staffing?
Yes.
Or for staffing, you would have to take what we pay contractually and add it to staffing. And say, this is how we compare to a community with like for like services and size.
But even a broader metric, expenditures per capita,
Yes, yes. Expenditures per capita is a common one. Even, and it kind of depends on, you can do revenue per capita as well. And a lot of times those are used in long range financial planning, those types of metrics as well. Because a lot of times you will hear people say, commercial or residents don't pay for them, residential doesn't pay for itself. Commercial is what is going to bring in your, and there's arguments.
In our
for
case,
and
that's
against
not the
that.
case.
No.
The,
But yes, I would say per capita.
I'd almost say per capita revenue would be, I don't, both, I guess, because, we are so limited on our revenue compared to other communities. I mean, if you have, even if you're a small town, but you have a coffee, a chain on the corner, one, whether it's, a McDonald's or a coffee store, the revenue those places bring in is so significant.
Type of commercial matters
Matters.
significantly.
Like, we always are trying to figure out who are our comparables, and it's just so hard. You can find, like I drove to Glenwood last week, then you can find little rinky dink, places along the way, but you have one chain. And the sales tax is significant.
And then as far as,
It depends on,
expenses.
that's been how successful they are too. We had the subway for a while, like most noticed a bunch of
Well,
times.
yeah,
So.
I don't know if I don't mean like that. I mean like a convenience that people are buying.
Yeah, if you were to take like our general fund into it per capita, that's
That's
pretty
kind
good.
of good.
I would say parks would be harder because,
We have such a hybrid.
yeah, because it's geared so much towards tourism as well. So, that could be a little bit trickier. There's a lot for tourism purposes as well. But I would say if you were to take the general fund and say per capita, what that would look like, even. Well, and adding the capital and things like that.
Okay.
Per capita is a good one.
Sorry, I mean, this idea.
Yeah, no, you're fine. That's a good.
If you want to do that, I once did a list of comparables that could 10,000 out of Colorado. We're looking at any expenses, still got there's some. If you want to exclude the ski resort towns, because they're. You want to exclude. Similar size towns like Plymouth is on I-25, but it's got a Costco and a Super Bowl.
If you're on the interstate, it's a different one.
You gotta get these.
So this slide is the fund balance and the reserves, like I'm talking about. So if you look in the gray down at the bottom, that's what we are budgeting to have left over after we meet our 3-month reserve. This is a really great amount for the general fund. And what this means is that should something happen that we can't fund, don't get grant funding for, it's our piggy bank to allocate towards throughout the year because, and I'll mention it in a future slide, there's no limit. We can amend the budget as many times as we want throughout the year. We do it, the big one, but we can and we do amend it throughout the year. So we'll go over that, but that funding down at the bottom is going to get bigger when I finish up the audit and we have those leftover funds from 2025 that roll over into that fund balance. So that amount is going to be even larger for us, at least in the general.
When it comes time for, we have to talk about that, because we've got. With your big projects in the question, do you try to save some of that? If we don't get either the grant or the loan that we need for these giant projects.
And hopefully by the time budget comes around, I would imagine we would know about our stormwater loan for sure. I'm not sure about the grant. We should know about the culvert grant.
We'll know
By then.
about, next month or so.
So we'll have some answers. But
And these balances in reserve sit in what kind of accounts?
good question. So our money sits, we do keep some in general checking. So our account. The rest is Hollow Trust. It's a municipal investment pool. So we do earn interest on that.
34%.
Right now, we're down to about 3.5. But in the last couple of years, we were up 5s. Hollow Trust.
The trust.
Hollow Trust.
Library.
we have limited, limitations on where you can invest the public's money. It has to be, you can't, you can't be out there buying a bunch of stocks and risking our money. So we're limited.
Yeah.
So
All the
we're
rest is very
quite really-
popular.
We understand the public sector.
So like I mentioned before, budget amendments for any time throughout the year. The first budget amendment is typically the rollover amendment. So what that does is it rolls forward any unspent budget for capital projects or grants that are not complete. We're not going to roll forward unspent personnel funds. It just doesn't work like that. Then that just trickles down and it sits in the fund balance. But typically occurs once the prior year audit is complete or in a preliminary draft state, because then I know about what needs to roll over and we can have a better feel for the new fund balance amounts that are added.
So
So
expecting rollover maybe in June.
June probably, and there's no rush
For
on it, so
2025.
for 25, yeah. So what you guys will see and why we couldn't get it done before the prior board had moved on is that the audit wasn't complete. So I don't have those numbers yet. It's just not the best practice to do it. We've done it before when we had projects that needed to start or we would lose funding. But we don't allocate money that we don't necessarily need, that we don't have. So we knew there was a good reasonable amount there that we were able to allocate, but it doesn't usually happen until June. And then we typically always do a second budget amendment towards the end of the year, which covers additional changes or requests from the board throughout the year. We just kind of tally up and then it's a paper exercise to formally appropriate the budget.
That would
Good accidents that happen.
Yeah.
It could be that, it could be we have the opportunity to get a good grant that might have a match that we didn't plan it for, and we'll come to you and ask, and then that gets all trued up at another. But we don't, it's always approved by the board.
No
And these are increases
No
and
surprise.
decrements to the budget.
Mhm.
There are also occasional reallocations.
Yeah, so we could, yes, that's right. So capital projects come up or emergencies, and we say, okay, now this capital project takes priority over this capital project. So we're gonna reallocate the funds. Sometimes we'll have additional revenue that comes in and we'll go ahead and add that to a budget amendment. You don't have to do that. It's the expenditure side that is the budget law that you have to adopt the appropriation, additional use of funds. Well, but yeah, they can happen.
Only 2 slides left.
I've been putting them off this thing. The Board of Trustees meetings, so as they relate to finance, you'll see, as we mentioned before, an accounts payable list. That goes on a consent agenda. All outstanding invoices or electronic payments that we've made since the last board meeting will be reported there. All invoices are signed by at least 2 staff members, always me. And then depending on the amounts or what it is for, department directors, Victoria. And then we typically make payments 2 times a month after each board meeting. Again, sometimes we have to make intermediate if a contractor really needs your money.
Like a contractor
I
says,
got
I can't pay my staff until
Yeah.
I get paid. We'll
Yeah.
do what we call a hand check, but it still shows up.
Yeah.
But otherwise,
But you still, yeah, so you still will see every single expense that goes out.
but we only pay
Payroll.
bills twice a month. We don't do it every week like bigger communities do, or every day like some communities do. We only do it twice.
I'll also be giving you financials, which will look very similar to those last pages of all the accounts on there. So you'll have access to all of our budget to actual revenues and expenditures for the year. Every month, line item details. If you ever have questions on anything, please don't hesitate to just shoot me an email. I really encourage you to reach out before meetings so that we don't, unless it's, something you feel very passionate about to, bring up in a public meeting, feel free, of course, but it also allows me time to research things that I don't know. And then also Poppy Victoria. And then the resources, on those finance page where the town budgets are, the annual financial statements, any financial reports. Again, you can call me, leave me a voicemail, send me an email. I'm pretty available. We can do Teams meetings. Dense. It is so much, and you'll likely need to hear it time and time and time over again before it even remotely starts to sing. Right? It's just,
I'm getting it.
you are. But unless you really have that finance brain, it doesn't always sink in, and that's okay, because that's what I'm here for. So don't expect you to have this on. Just the case.
And I will tell you, Cassie meets with department heads several times when we start working budget and, two girls organizations, she doesn't want a lot of excess and.
You're increasing, why are you increasing? We need a note.
So she'll put on your budget when you look in this book. Usually anything that changed by more than 10%, we put a note to remind ourselves throughout the year, why would that make that jump? Or if it's a one-time unusual kind of thing, when it used to happen.
And sometimes I'll just put notes of things that are typically in that account, because sometimes I forget, the account labels are very vague, so
The chart of it.
sometimes it's, you know.
So, yeah, questions? Comments?
Is there like a chart of accounts explanation?
No, oh, I get what you're saying. Wow, I love that question. There isn't, but I will provide it to you. I will provide one to you, because it is very similar. It's the first two numbers are the fund. The second two numbers are, if you want to think of it as a department or a type. And then the last four are the accounts. So anything that starts with a 3 is a revenue and a 4 is an expense.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and so they're broken out. You'll see all the revenues and they go by fund. You'll see the general fund first.
I always highlight it.
all the expenses.
It's the,
And it's
it
like-
doesn't work together, and it's a starting page.
It's a canned report, so the labels aren't always exactly the way I want them to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, Sean loves this. I also love
My
this.
husband, the general ledger is.
That helps.
It does, yeah, if you're really wanting to look at those details, it does. It helps.
Yes, another area we're hoping to maybe change that we'll see some savings will be when we no longer have to do a single federal audit every year. So the rule is if you have more than $1 million in federal funding, you have to do a separate single audit
Of the federal funds.
of the federal funds. And we've had to do that now every year since.
I think we're gonna be so close
This year.
I know close. They just increased it from 750 to $1 million. And
That's a bad question.
of expenditures if they're federal.
It's the higher
Look
separate
at-
for.
It's a separate,
They do,
they have a separate
our
person,
still does it, but they charge more.
Sure.
a separate person to look at that. So we're
So
hoping that
if Trump
will.
continues to redline Colorado, if fewer federal funds, it'll. Silver lining to a dark cloud.
Silver line?
But then if we get a brick grant,
Yeah,
storm on,
Yeah.
that's better. Yeah, it's up and down, but we might have a little, depending, this year, I know we were really close.
what I think is unpredictable with this time is if, well, stuff's going. That changes hourly, but if gas prices are $5 a gallon this summer, how is that gonna affect? Probably not, that's. Who knows?
We have a couple of minutes. I went to a session that the state demographer presented on Friday. And he said, and he's been doing this a long time, decades. And he said, this is his most somber year for Colorado's economy since he has been seated. He said, we have always been a top 10 state for people to live in based on economic factors. And this is the first year we dropped to like 29. And went through all these different factors, including one of those being loss of jobs instead of gain of jobs. They think housing prices have topped out for now. We're not gonna see those go any higher for a while. He did say that credit card debts is high, the highest it's been since the year after COVID. And bankruptcies are up equal to the 70s or something, but it was a number he hasn't seen in a long time. Interesting statistics like DIA, the airport. They track if people are, this is destination or is this a transfer? Because we're the third busiest airport in the nation and sixth in the world. And he said the majority was vastly destination until last year. And we are now less, it was like low, like I don't have my notes in front of me, somewhere between 30 and 40% is not destination, the rest are transfers. People migrating into the state is way down. International migration into Colorado is up. So the people aren't, yeah,
That is. good.
national
That's
is down, and then they had all sorts of. The employment numbers were really associated a lot with immigrant workers leaving Colorado due to their profiling, I guess. They had that, it was full of things, but he said, he made a couple, I thought, really, pretty out there predictions. And he said, if the federal chair is replaced with a non-partisan person, he thinks we will see a full recession. And also, there was two factors that could lead to, if the war in Iran and prices of gas continue high for up to 2 months, we will go into a recession. And, you know, those are all their stats, they're showing all this stuff. And so it was interesting that he said, this is one of the most somber years. He said, I can never remember reporting on our state. And, so it was really, he had a lot of interesting stats, and I thought about maybe sharing his PowerPoint in my next admin report or putting it into it, because it's really interesting stuff, and he of course explains it all, but very concerned for our state, at least for what we're in right now. It was always goes up and down.
On the bright side, the report just came out, the business starts are way up. In some categories up 60%, including non-Colorado starts that are filed in Colorado.
You're okay.
Mine, Cal, it's great.
The water's fine. So any other information you need for now to be able to look at your finance statements?
Are you on this list?
This is a very.
Oh, yes, so that if that were to hold true, that would become the actual, yes. Yes. But I'll tell you that usually those projections aren't.
Right. Our fleet. Where's that?
Yeah, that's actually on my list. We don't really have them, detailed out. I mean, I think in past audits, when we call for these types of things out, then you have to do a corrective action. I'll have happened since I've been here, so there might be prior corrective actions, or policies that have been written for grants and things like that, but, we do have, I know we have some things,
We have procurement policies and grant
we have
guidelines.
payment. Eight. But I have a lot of financial policies that I'd like to get drafted up. Some of them would require, you know, to go to the board, to just get them documented, like a reserve policy, you know, more formal.
Hopefully the competitive bidding threshold, I forget what.
Yeah,
25.
25.
Major.
Yes, what is a major, yeah.
Anything over 10, we get 3 quotes. Over 25, we have to go to a formal RFP process.
And do you have a spending limit?
Mhm.
Yes. Why don't I have a little cheat sheet and I'll send it out.
Within our categories.
Yeah, and then I have to, within that, follow quotes for 10 and more, and RFP or formal bid 25 or more, and board approval. But almost everything at that level for us is a major project that you guys know about and we budgeted for. It's not,
Sure.
yeah. Yeah. We have to get pretty creative to get 3 people from different, that aren't signing something.
All of them, for example, get a 45% improvement. Like that type of stuff. There's probably more.
You know, the comments you should hear about.
No. Yeah, last year, no, last year we had a clean of it.
Yes.
Nothing.
Yeah, the year prior, I think there was a mistake on a grant receivable. That's where they get us, new grants. Where it is recognized as a receivable instead of a deferred, I believe is what it was. But, yeah.
Any promises?
No.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And
When is that joint board meeting?
yeah, and Cassie, are you bonded?
I am on.
You and Cassie and I are both bonded because we're the ones that are responsible for all things budget.
Yeah.
Is that?
If there was an error or it's like insurance.
They're insured.
So if something happened, yeah, you would, but. Mhm.
Our daily deposits and reconciliation of our daily deposits does not happen home. That happens by deputy clerk and town clerk, and then they reconcile, and then I have reviews of all of it. So there are so many, there's.
Oh, we have to. We're just so
Yeah.
small.
It has not.
Yeah, no, even things like the quarters that feed the showers. I wish those could be credit card machines, but I have to send a staff twice a day in the summer to take the quarters out of the showers. And then she has to have 2 people present to take those quarters. And then they bring them here.
And the parking kiosks are the same.
Yeah, and no, this takes our staff time. And then they can't count it. They just collect it. And it has to go to the bank with 2, goes through the machine. I say change showers to dollars at least, not quarters. They,
Change.
no, but in each shower, you have to feed that shower. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
they don't-
yeah.
Yeah, so no, we have to have all sorts of internal controls for that stuff, and we get, like I said, there's only a few of us, so it's like, okay, she can't count us.
Typically, I don't know. Someone in the if somebody else reviews them. That can't, and the only person, so what happens is luckily we have the contractor who does year end.
Carl.
Carl, so he's doing our financial statements for us, and that's, you know, him in addition to the auditor, it's about as much as we can afford and makes sense, right? Like you
Oh,
don't,
we do.
we're not gonna hire another accountant, you know, it just doesn't make financial sense, so. Yeah.
He can never retire, Carl.
Yeah,
Try.
he tries, but no, we won't let him.
Eight, something like that. We cycled through several.
Well, the flood took care of people right away.
We will pick up the town and work on it.
I don't